Well, first of all, great to join you from Le Bourget, so thank you. Certainly found a lot of different things when we did our most recent research regarding defense particularly, and one of them was 90% of the executives that we surveyed feeling that the demands for acquisitions for defense products, both in Europe and in the US, are shifting towards software-defined. So 90% believe that the future is going to be dictated by software-defined products.
What does that mean in terms of deployment? Because we know there are stepped up requirements from Europe in particular. There are concerns about meeting some of the increased demand that is happening with increased defense spending. If it's software we're talking about, does that mean greater deployment quickly?
Well, if you step back and you think about what's going on in defense right now, there's a couple different trends that are coming forward. And let's start with Europe particularly. You have the global uncertainties that are driving defense acquisition budgets. In fact, what we're looking at is Europe is going to increase on about 7.9% compound annual growth rate between now and the next 5 years. And you compare that to the US growing at around 3.6%, you can see the dramatic increase here in Europe. You're also seeing new entrants coming in and causing companies and governments to think about how they do acquisitions a little bit differently. And so when you take that and then you bring in the fact that you have new technologies that are coming to the fore, it creates somewhat of a perfect storm. And so another interesting insight from the research was that a majority of the executives believe that how DoDs and MODs do defense acquisitions is going to shift and change. And this is going to require everybody to be able to operate at a different clock speed than they've been doing over the last decade or two or three.
John, what are you talking about seems to be something we're already seeing in the broader tech universe where it's not necessarily full-blown acquisitions, it's more partnerships. How does that have some bearing, though, in the defense industry when we're talking about the need for greater security?
Well, a couple of things are wrapped into there. I mean, the interesting on partnerships is something that actually has been a trend that started some time ago, and what we're seeing now is that over half the executives believe that partnerships are going to be key to them getting access to the right products, the right technologies, and the right markets. We're also seeing kind of a correlated activity that since 2022, 50% of the acquisitions done by the major players in this industry have been focused on companies that either do AI, machine-to-machine communications, or cyber. So all this is coming together, saying that the companies that are providing defense products, again with the software defined as being a driving trend here, are going to have to be able to report faster and move with technology more effectively, particularly around AI and autonomous.
Hey John, fascinating listening to your answers to Karen's great questions. Let me ask you a slightly different question as well. You talked about collaborations. I actually see a schism developing, actually, because a lot of the European players are very concerned about the commitment of the United States to NATO. They're concerned about using US kit because if they don't get the full software control over that kit in all circumstances as well. So actually, is that a thematic that you've seen on the ground at all, where actually the Europeans are looking at more self-help? Because, of course, as we know, the European Defence Fund primarily wants only European access as well. So just any thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly a trend that we see. So Europe, buying from Europe is something we're seeing, and we're kind of, you blend these themes together and you think about the partnerships, and you can see that some of this has been starting for a while, even before the new administration. I mean, if you look at what's going on with GCAP, which is the 6th generation fighter that brings together the UK, Italy, and Japan as the major partners, and then you look at what's happening with FCAS, which is a competing program for 6th generation, with France and Germany being the major partners there. They're already coming together. You also see another trend too, Steve, that you see US companies starting to look to partner with European companies, not just to go for European business, but also for international business. And one of the recent examples, I guess it goes back a year, would be when Northrop and Rheinmetall had done their agreement related to the F-35. So the trend's going to continue. I think it's going to become stronger. It's going to be an opportunity for European companies to, in some cases, maybe come together. Maybe not completely like an Airbus model, but maybe an MBDA kind of model, to look for and seek scale, which is one of the things that is going to be required to really be successful over the longer term in some of the platforms, thinking about things like on ground attack platforms particularly.